welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're going to go beyond just Kanye's music. We're going to look at all those business ventures. You guys sent us a ton of articles about building a billion-dollar empire, all that, right? And then how it all kind of fell apart.
Yeah, it's a really interesting story, especially when you think about like fame and public image and how all that plays into business these days.
For sure.
Yeah.
So let's start at the beginning. Obviously, everyone knows how successful his music has been, but he's always had this business side to him too, right? Like even going back to 2004 when he started Good Music.
Oh, yeah, that was a big move for sure. I think that's where you really start to see him understand ownership and how to use leverage in the music industry, right? He didn't just want to be an artist signed to some label, he wanted to be the label.
Exactly. So he created his own platform and then went and signed John Legend and Kid Cudi, Big Sean, all these huge names.
Right, and instead of some record label taking a giant chunk of the profits, he flipped it. He was the label.
It's pretty brilliant when you think about it. So,
Yeah.
how did that early move set him up for all the success he had later?
Well, I think Good Music really showed people he could build a successful brand, right? It wasn't just some hobby, it was a real investment. He brought in all this top talent, and that gave him credibility, way beyond just being a musician, And that was huge when it came to things like Yeezy taking off.
Makes sense. Yeezy, now that's where things got really crazy.
Yeah.
Partnering with Adidas back in 2015, that's what made him a billionaire. Do you remember those lines outside the stores every time they dropped a new shoe?
Oh, yeah. It was insane. Yeezy was the perfect example of creating hype and tapping into that whole exclusivity thing. But it was more than just marketing. There was a really smart business strategy there too, direct to consumer. He cut out all the traditional retail and sold straight to the fans, kept most of the profits.
So he's controlling the supply, the distribution, keeping more of the money. That's a smart move. But it wasn't just sneakers for Kanye, was it? It felt like he was doing everything. Real estate, tech, even starting a school, that Donda Academy.
Yeah, he was all over the place, bought this huge ranch in Wyoming, talked about building a whole Yeezy campus out there. Then there was the music streaming stuff with Tidal and even trying to start his own social media platform. It's that classic entrepreneur thing, right? Trying to diversify your portfolio.
I get it, but isn't there a risk that you end up spreading yourself too thin? Especially when you're leading so many different projects all at once.
That's the big question, right? Diversification is usually a good thing. It reduces risk. But it can backfire if you're not careful, if you don't have the right people in place, You need good teams for each thing, and you got to be focused on your goals.
And I think this is where we start to see things kind of unravel for Kanye. It all starts with that Adidas partnership falling apart in 2022. What caused that whole thing to implode?
Well, it was a mess, honestly. A mix of business and personal stuff all colliding. Kanye was making these public statements, attacking Adidas, and whatever his reasons were, it just made him a huge liability for them. It really shows you how much your personal brand and your business are tied together these days, especially with social media and everything.
Yeah, Adidas is this global brand. They got to protect their image, right? It's a tough lesson on how these partnerships really work, who has the power and all that. So what happened to Kanye's businesses when Adidas dropped him?
Oh, it was bad, really bad. It happened so fast, overnight. He lost everything, the manufacturing, the distribution network, all of Adidas's marketing power, gone. And that was the entire foundation of Yeezy's success, right? It wiped out a huge chunk of his net worth and triggered all these other problems.
Yeah, all those lawsuits, brands dropping him left and right, and all the reports of unpaid loans and stuff. It's like a house of cards, right?
Right.
Once one piece goes, the whole thing collapses.
Yeah.
So what's the takeaway here for someone trying to build their own business?
I think Kanye's situation is a perfect example of how even when you're super successful, having one single point of failure can take you down, Even if it seems like a solid relationship, relying too much on one partner is super risky.
So you can't put all your eggs in one basket, basically. And that brings us to this whole idea of liquidity, which I think a lot of people don't really get. Can you explain what that means and why it was a problem for Kanye?
Sure. So liquidity is basically how easily you can turn what you own your assets into cash, right? Imagine your business has some huge unexpected expense, like a lawsuit or a machine breaks down or something. If all your money is tied up in things you can't sell quickly, like real estate, you're kind of screwed. Even if you're wealthy on paper, if you can't get to the cash fast enough, you're in trouble.
It's a really important lesson for everyone, not just billionaires like Kanye. So what happened next? Did he just give up after all that?
Nah, not Kanye. He actually launched Yeezy 2.0, trying to do it all on his own as an independent brand, and he's doing all this other stuff too, tech, AI music. It's pretty wild.
So he's trying to rebuild, but this time without the Adidas safety net. That's a bold move. But before we get into all that, I want to hear from you guys listening. What stood out to you so far about Kanye's story? What parts really resonate with you? We'll be back in a minute to dig into his comeback attempts and what we can learn from all of this, the good and the bad.
Welcome back, picking up where we left off.
We just saw how fast Kanye's empire fell apart after Adidas dropped him.
Right. And now we're into this comeback phase, which is always super interesting,
So he launches Yeezy 2.0, going independent this time. He seems pretty determined to prove he can do it without Adidas. What's the strategy there? What's he thinking?
Well, I think it's about control, right? Complete control over everything, the designs, manufacturing, even the marketing and sales. It's a huge gamble, for sure. He's basically betting everything on his name, on his vision for the brand.
But he lost all that infrastructure from Adidas, like their supply chains, their global reach. How's he dealing with that?
That's the tough part, Building a supply chain from nothing, that's not easy, especially in fashion. From what I've seen, he's working with these smaller manufacturers, maybe focusing on smaller releases, keeping things exclusive, to try and maintain that Yeezy hype.
So he's trying to recreate what made Yeezy so popular before, right? The limited supply, the high demand, all that. But can he really do it without a giant company like Adidas backing him up?
That's the question, isn't it? It all comes down to the brand, Do people still see Yeezy as this huge cultural thing, even without the Adidas logo?
It's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. And it's not just the fashion stuff. He's getting into tech, AI music, even partnering with people like Elon Musk. Is that a smart move, or is it just like a desperate attempt to stay relevant?
It's probably a little bit of both, honestly. Kanye's always been about pushing boundaries, trying new things, right? So tech and AI, that fits his personality for sure.
Right.
But teaming up with someone like Elon, well, he's controversial, that's for sure, and that can be risky.
Yeah, it keeps him in the news, but it could also scare off some potential partners, right? People who don't want to be associated with that kind of unpredictable behavior.
Exactly. It's a balancing act, He has to weigh the risks against the potential rewards.
All right, let's switch gears for a sec and talk about Good Music, his record label.
Yeah.
That was one of his first big successes. But how's it been doing lately?
It's definitely had its ups and downs, Some big artists left, and there's been a lot of talk about whether it's actually making money, what direction they're going in. It just shows you that even when you're successful, you got to keep adapting, keep evolving to stay relevant.
So winning early on doesn't mean you've made it, right?
Yeah.
You always got to be innovating, keeping up with the changes.
For sure. That's business 101, right? But what's interesting is that even the things Kanye has tried that haven't been huge successes, like Yeezy, they still teach us something. Like that time he tried to create his own streaming platform with Tidal, remember?
Right. It didn't really work out.
No, but it showed he understood how people were listening to music, how things were changing, and he was willing to challenge the big guys like Spotify.
So even his failures are kind of inspiring in a way, right? They show you it's okay to take risks, try to shake things up.
That's it. Kanye's whole story is like this case study, It shows you the brilliance and the downsides of being ambitious, being an entrepreneur. He's not afraid to push limits, but that sometimes comes at a price.
For sure. So what do you guys listening think about this part of Kanye's career? What stands out to you about his attempts to, rebuild and reinvent himself? We'll be right back to talk about the impact of everything he's done, the lessons we can all learn from his successes and his failures. Okay, so we're back for the last part of our deep dive into Kanye's business world. We've seen him build this huge empire, watched it fall apart, and now he's trying to make a comeback. It's pretty wild.
Yeah, it's definitely more than just celebrity gossip. It shows you how brands are built these days, all about disruption, adapting to change, all that.
It's true, It's easy to get caught up in the drama, but his business moves, there's a lot to unpack there. Kanye's a visionary, right? I mean, he shook up the music industry with good music, changed the whole sneaker game with Yeezy, and now he's off doing the tech stuff, the AI music thing.
He knows how to create a brand that people want, like that feeling of exclusivity, gotta have it. He's a master at marketing, at building hype like nobody else.
Yeah, no doubt. But we also saw how he messed up, right? Putting all his eggs in the Adidas basket, all the unpredictable stuff he does, no safety net, it all came crashing down.
So now the big question is, can he come back from all that? Can talent and ambition outweigh all the controversy, the financial problems? Can he rebuild his empire, or is his brand just, too damaged?
I guess we'll have to wait and see. But one thing's for sure, it's going to be interesting to watch. It's a story of wins and losses, pushing boundaries, taking big risks. It's got it all.
And there are some important lessons in there for everyone, right? Entrepreneurs, investors, anyone who wants to understand how business works these days. Kanye shows us that success can be fleeting, your reputation matters more than anything, and even the smartest people need to balance creativity with, like, actual business skills.
It's a good point.
Yeah.
So as we wrap this up, I want to leave you guys with something to think about. What does success really mean in business? Is it just about the money, or is there something more? Is it about making an impact, pushing the limits, challenging the way things are done? Kanye, love him or hate him, he's definitely done all of that.
It's a question we should all ask ourselves, as we figure out our own path in business and in life.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Kanye's world. It's been a wild ride. Until next time, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep diving deep.